Good morning and welcome everyone. I'm David Cory and I'm here with my colleague Kim Cairns. We work for the Emotional Intelligence Training Company and we are having a conversation this morning about emotional self-awareness. And this is part of, as you may know, this is part of a 15-part series. We did an original 15-part series where we talked a lot about each one of the 15 competencies, but it was more presentation style, and we would talk about the particular EQ competency in question and talk a little bit more about what it was and how it was applicable. This time we want to have a further conversation and just the idea originally was that we would get people involved. People would send us stories, experiences, and we still want that. We still want people to send us their questions about each of the 15 competencies, send us your stories and your experiences of working with clients on trying to help them to improve in these various areas, and that would all be very interesting to hear. So we still want that, and we're going to have a conversation about emotional self-awareness. And I thought it'd be interesting, Kim, to start off by talking about what it looks like when someone struggles with emotional self-awareness, when someone is really cut off from how they experience their emotions, and just wondering, Kim, what in terms of your experience, maybe for you personally, when you personally are cut off from your emotions, what are the symptoms? What do we look for? How can we tell?
Well, I think what comes to my mind, Dave, is it is that disconnect from what I'm feeling. And I think that, being a somewhat older character and male and from Western Canada, there was a strong encouragement to not dwell on feelings. So culturally, we create this atmosphere of, best not to go there. Just get on with the task, do what needs to be done, and it is what it is. Are just kind of, the cornerstones of child rearing during the time that I grew up. So not a lot of encouragement to, number one, even think about or recognize feelings, and definitely not to express them. So, when we have that kind of culture, it's a shutdown kind of situation. And so I think that, for me, what I experienced would be physiological implications initially. And the tendency, of course, was to just suppress that. Just
Right.
Don't go there. Don't
Yeah.
go there. Just get on with what you're doing right now. So I think there's a carryover within our culture, even to these days, where just don't go there. That's scary territory, and not something that I can manage. Like we're given the message that, okay, this is stuff that just happens to you. You can't really do anything with it.
Right. And what's the danger, Kim? What happens when we get on with it? When we sort of have tasks to do and we're task focused, and it's like we're going to leave emotions out of it. We're just going to get on with things and we're going to do it. What are the dangers there?
Well, I mean, the things that come to my mind is that let's take it towards the anger end of the continuum. You have that cortisol running through your body, that adrenaline running through your body. And there's no resolution to it because we end up in similar situations and have those similar responses in those situations. So, just from a health perspective, not being able to recognize what those feelings are, why do they continue to come up in those kind of situations, and what could I be doing differently in those situations to acknowledge that those emotions are happening and manage them and know that I'm actually in charge of them.
Right. And what you're talking about,
without that awareness of what they are, I don't have any starting point at all.
absolutely. So you're kind of talking about that kind of situational emotional self-awareness. So sort of in the moment, here's this tremendous source of data, this tremendous source of information for me in terms of how I can operate in a particular given situation, and I'm not accessing that information. And so, I may be extremely angry or agitated about a situation and choose to ignore it and do things that I would regret later. And that's just, one issue with that situational. And I'm sure there are a number of others, like when you feel like someone said something in a meeting and it struck you the wrong way. You chose to ignore that feeling and didn't bring it up or mention it or discuss it, and then later regretted it as a missed opportunity. A missed opportunity to address something which could be really critical to the team moving forward. And I'm sure there's many other of those situational. But I was also thinking, Kim, of the kind of the way that people kind of drift off of behaving according to their own values. So now you've got people who are doing things that are extremely unsatisfying or unfulfilling for them. Recall our conversation about self-actualization, and they're not sure why, because there's that disconnect between the head and the heart, and really that's the sort of what we're talking about, is that connection.
Yes.
And we see those people, don't we, in coaching, those people that are finding that things are unfulfilling for them, not realizing why they're not experiencing that fulfillment in their lives, and really emotional self-awareness is one of those places to key in on.
Yeah, definitely, Dave, and I think too, if it's your example of being in the meeting and somebody says something that sets me off, if I'm not addressing that, the direction that I'm going in is that land of assumption. I'm assuming that I've been attacked, or I've been belittled or demeaned in some way. And then those assumptions lead to me formulating beliefs about something with very limited information. I mean, I do joke around about this with a lot of people, but I say to people when I'm working with them, for me the cue is, Kim, be careful. You're beginning to believe everything you're thinking, and that's a poor source of information. And those assumptions are based on those feelings, those physiological responses in my body, those feelings that I can't quite get a grip on. So the other part that comes to my mind is that expansion of vocabulary about our feelings.
Yes.
It's not just the two ends of the continuum, angry and delighted. There's all of those nuanced feelings that are in between those two ends of the spectrum. So to me, that the whole notion of emotional self-awareness is being curious about what those gradations of feeling are, and being able to articulate to myself what it is I'm feeling. To be curious about, okay, yes, we have that expression, go from 0 to 60. But really between 0 and 60, we're going through a range of feelings. And being able to identify those is a great starting point. It's just the expansion of our own vocabulary, the expansion of our own self-talk, in fact.
Right. If you think about what the sort of evolutionary purpose of emotional self-awareness is, it is, David Rock talks a bit about this when he looks at the research around neuroscience, is that one of the most basic pathways in neuroscience is our brain processing external stimuli as a threat or non-threat. If we're not paying attention to that, we can get into all kinds of trouble. Just think about misreading those cues, and we do it every day. We do it all the time, right? Yes. We think that something's not a threat, turns out to be a threat, or vice versa. And we think we perceive something to be a threat, and so we stay away, we avoid, and might be just the thing we need to go move closer toward. So that part is very interesting as well. We're talking about our facility with reading our environment, with knowing and understanding our physiological and biological response to our environment. And just think about the implications of that, Kim. If we're not doing that well, all kinds of things can happen to us, and then we're wondering why we're in such a mess, why we're stuck.
Yes. Well, and I like your notion of environment too. It's about reading that external environment that we're in, and reading our own internal environment, and the interplay of those two things. And again, it's that curiosity factor. Well, isn't this, to be interested in how we're responding ourselves, rather than that runaway train kind of dialogue in our heads about what direction it's going in, and what we're feeling about it, to be curious about that. Well, this is curious that I tend to feel this way in this kind of situation. Why does this continue to arise for me? What other options do I have available here? Is a lot gentler way to be dealing with it internally, and probably a lot more productive with regard to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
What are our wants out here, not our shoulds? All of these things are linked to our emotional self-awareness.
And I really like your bringing into the conversation the idea of learning. So that is reflecting on our reactions to our environment, to the various stimuli, and change that we, or choice and change. So that we have all these options in terms of the way that we interpret our environment, and the decisions that we make based on that information. And I think that's tremendously powerful, and really at the center of all of what we talk about with our clients, which is change. We're after meaningful, sustainable change, and the only way to do that is through this pipeline, if you will, between the head and the heart. How do we get more in touch, more in tune? And I think it's really interesting, Kim, what we do when we don't know how to deal with those particularly unpleasant emotions. We kind of stuff them into our emotional baggage, and so we're all carrying around these huge emotional bags with us everywhere we go. And we get to work in the morning, we kind of turn sideways and kind of get the bags through the door, and we shuffle down the hallway with all of our emotional baggage, and we all have it, and we all bring it with us, and we all park it by the desk, and it interferes if we don't deal with it appropriately, and understand how to process all of those emotions.
Yes. And what a great first step to be able to say, I feel this, and this is internally, this isn't in dialogue even. I'm feeling such and such when this happens. What I'd like to see myself do is this, because that is more in congruence with my values. So that little bit of internal dialogue can then be externalized too. I can use exactly the same process when I'm interacting with others. And of course, that's going to yield a lot better communication between me and whoever I'm dealing with.
You're talking about the connection between emotional self-awareness and emotional expression, and we often talk in our workshops, in our courses, about how those go hand in hand. And it's about, first of all, being aware and having that awareness, so working on our own emotional self-awareness, our own connection between understanding our emotional operating system, the term that you often use, which is a fantastic term to talk about emotional intelligence, and then talk about how we can then express those emotions appropriately for better relationships and a deeper connection with the people that we work with, and that and we often talk about the pond and the pebble in the pond idea, that this is about us first, and then it's about family, friends, community, workplace, and on and outward it goes. So that these emotions that that society wants to pretend are not there are affecting all aspects of our lives. And really, we're just encouraging people to be aware, to acknowledge, to get in touch, and to be intelligent about those emotions. And that's the sort of the crux of emotional intelligence.
Well, and I think what comes to mind when you say that, Dave, too, is this notion that I should be a finished product. I should be fully functioning, fully formed. And just a shift even in my emotional thinking about that to a place of I am a work in progress. I am not at any end point with regard to my learning about anything on the planet, but definitely about myself. It's an ongoing process. And to just get comfortable with that notion. And that as I go through various stages in my life, my emotional operating system is going to change. Because I am going to value different things. I'm going to be in different contexts, different environments. And I am going to feel different things at various stages in my life, and things will shift. And to be comfortable with that notion. I mean, change is inevitable. And so I think the more we can turn that inward and say, yeah, I acknowledge, I change constantly. Great, I'm alive.
I like that, Kim, and just want to pull in something that you mentioned earlier, which is going to help with all of that, and that is this idea of the emotional vocabulary. You know, you talked about being able to differentiate between, feeling good or bad. I mean, basically, when we say that we're feeling good or we're feeling bad, we're talking about pleasant, unpleasant. And then, what would be great, and maybe we'll produce such a diagram, is we'll start breaking those down. Okay, so we're on the pleasant side of things. Okay, so now, and of course, Mayer and Salovey have done a great job of this. They've created the mood meter, which really helps to differentiate among emotions. But then to start attaching words to that. So, what are the good, the so-called good emotions versus the so-called bad emotions? And of course, we don't like talking about bad emotions. We like talking about unpleasant emotions because, again, what happens ultimately is we get back into the shoulds. And, I should feel a certain way. And we know that that causes all kinds of problems when people think that they should not feel what they're feeling. We want to do away with that idea of, that you should feel a certain way and go with the fact that you are feeling a certain way. And it's whatever it is that you feel, and it's okay. They're just emotions, after all, no matter how intense or even extreme in some cases they are, they're just emotions. And so we just encourage people to feel them and determine an appropriate way of expression, because again, emotions get expressed in our actions and in our words verbally. And so what's the most appropriate, what's the most intelligent to take us further towards our goals and not further away from our goals, which often happens when we just fly off and express emotions which are, first of all, not very precisely precise in our awareness, and then we just simply let fly.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I'm going to throw in a little humor here, Dave.
Excellent.
So when you and I gathered today in different locales, the first thing that hit me was, oh wow, my colleague's in a suit and tie, and he looks very distinguished. And what was going on inside for me was, oh my God, maybe I need to actually put a shirt and a jacket and a tie on. This was going on in my mind. This is emotionally what I was feeling as I was seeing you. And then I said, well, is that really what I want to do? Is that important? And within that was this kind of, lightly sweating palms, a bit of quicker breathing, a certain kind of anxiety was going through me. And then I just laughed. I said, well, how important is that? well, it's not very important at all. And actually, I truly want to represent the West Coast, a truly casual kind of environment. And I think that my esteemed colleague is in Calgary, the center of the oil and gas industry. It's a bit more tightly wound than out here. So, in fact, this is probably a good thing that we're dressed differently today. But I'm just using that as an example of constantly we are going through feelings about situations, however small. And the better we get at recognizing those, and again, as you have said, driving towards what it is I want. What's the outcome I want to see here? And so what's the extraneous information in there that's not important with regard to this situation?
Thanks for that, Kim. I really appreciate that. And for me, it was okay. So what am I going to wear today? I've got the conversation with Kim, and oh, there's my new skinny tie that my daughter Becky, well, my wonderful daughter Becky, so generously gave me as a gift just recently, and I'm gonna wear that. And I thought of Becky. I thought of how much I love my daughter, and I put the tie on and I put the jacket on. I just felt really good, really up, and really ready for this conversation, and feeling like and for me it's always been the case that when I dress well, when I dress professionally, I feel like I kind of take that on, and so it helps me to feel ready to dress the way that I want to be dressed for a particular occasion, so that's what it was for me, and I was feeling kind of excited to have this conversation, and we're going through the series, and I think we're having better conversations each time. We want it to be useful and informative for people, and so it's about sharing all of this. It's about sharing our experiences, and sharing our thoughts and our ideas, and personally about being aware of what's going on for us. And we've been talking about these things for years, and of course it's one thing to teach, and it's another thing to do. And so we strive to be better at the various skills and competencies that we talk with others about, and so we kind of challenge each other in that regard, and for me that's been a really great thing. And I just really appreciate our relationship, Kim, the fact that we work together so well, and the fact that we can talk about whatever's going on, and but unless we're in tune and in touch with that, and I know that I'm not as good at it as you are. What happens in that regard is that you can kind of tell that something's going on with me, but I'm not the first one to necessarily come out with it and share it. And you're very patient with me. You kind of wait, know that maybe something's up and something's of concern to me or whatever, and eventually I will communicate that with you. And that's how relationships go, right? Not everybody is at the same level with respect to emotional self-awareness. Then we got to negotiate those differences, and I think that's tremendously fascinating.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, and it comes from that place of knowing myself, continuing to want to be curious and know more about myself, and not to put myself into a nice little compartment around that. I view that more as an open space. That is space, really. The final frontier for those Star Trek fans out there, but it's open. It's wide open. And again, you've alluded to our relationship. We've known each other for a long time, and I tremendously value our ability to eventually get around to talking about everything we need to talk about, and dancing in all of those moments together, and figuring it out. And in the process of that is both of us continuing to work on our own emotional self-awareness. So I truly value that too.
Well, and for those of you who are listening and thinking about your own relationships and your own emotional self-awareness, a real relationship killer is to not address your emotional self-awareness. to not be in touch and in tune with what's going on inside you, that's a sure way to choke the lifeblood out of a relationship. So it's incumbent on all of us to venture there and to get comfortable with the uncomfortable. I think that's going to be a new slogan of ours, is getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, because emotions are uncomfortable. They just are. And again, society gives emotions a terrible reputation, and it's like, let's leave emotions out of it, let's not go there, and people are terribly uncomfortable with unpleasant emotions, and we have to get comfortable with it. And the more we are, the better our relationships are going to be, because we're going to talk about those difficult things, the challenging things. We're going to have the difficult conversations, the crucial conversations, and we're going to be able to go there. And it's a tremendously deepening and connecting thing to be able to actually wade into those uncomfortable and difficult emotions and have that conversation. But it begins with us. It begins with us personally getting in tune with what bugs us, what upsets us, what irritates us, what annoys us, what pleases us, what feels fulfilling and wonderful for us, and what are our values? Who do we want in our life? Who do we not want in our life, etc. And when you choke that off, boy, you see a lot of dysfunction. A lot of dysfunctional relationships. And even in our professional careers to date, Kim, we've seen dysfunctional relationships as a result of either a lack of emotional self-awareness or a lack of emotional expression. So people keeping things to themselves. And, are you thinking about some of the examples I'm thinking about, Kim? Not a pretty sight, right?
No, it doesn't yield good results. And I think that when we're constricting those emotions, those feelings that we have inside, we tend to get into the same kind of situations over and over again. There's a real Groundhog Day factor to that, and even that might be enough of a thought to jar me to the place of, okay, I need to be a bit more curious about this. I need to figure this out. Just having Bill Murray's face in my mind as I think that. So it's again kind of being easier on ourselves. It's harder to constrict than it is to be open about it. As difficult as that feels to a lot of us, but it is freeing to not be constricted by, no, I need to stuff that down. I need to stuff that down.
Yes.
So yeah, try and my little internal motto is just try and be open as much as possible in every situation. There's always learning.
I'm noticing the time, Kim. We're coming up to the end of our stated time together, and so just by way of wrap up, just want to do a quick review and just say, really encourage people to be thinking about, until our next broadcast, is the idea of getting in tune and in touch. How can we strengthen that connection and really, how can people improve their emotional self-awareness? Just, a couple of quick ideas, Kim, about improving our ability to be more emotionally self-aware. What can we do?
Well, I think here's just a quick hit. In this next week, take a look at what's happening in a day, and pick a moment when you've been angry. Pick a moment when you've been happy, and then be able to describe what the circumstances were around that, and then how you manage that, given that information. So you're going to be reflecting more in a focused fashion on some of these feelings. And then over the course of time, try and get a bit more nuanced in your thinking about those feelings. I mean, start off with the big ones. That's a good starting point, just for developing your own awareness. And then as time goes forward, you can take a look at more of some of the nuanced feelings that happen too. So there's just a quick thought around a bit of a shift. I'm going to be intentionally examining my feelings, what caused them, and what I did with the results of that.
And I'm just gonna build on that idea and say, if you haven't seen one, go to the internet, print out a list of emotions. There's all kinds of them there. Print them out. and maybe try to identify in some of those situations, maybe those recurring situations which are upsetting or whatever they are to you, and just being more precise about what are the feelings, how do you feel in that situation, and maybe jotting down a couple of notes about it. You know, the journaling is a tremendously powerful thing for getting more in touch and in tune with our emotions. So we're gonna leave it there, and it's a great, it's a great segue to our next show, which is on emotional expression. So we will talk about, okay, so now you're aware, you're in tune, you're in touch. What's the next step, and how to actually well, not the how to so much as discussing the challenges and the difficulties and the messy parts of that, and again, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, and we'll talk about that next time. So I want to thank you all for joining us today. I really appreciate you showing up, and we'd love to hear from you. Tell us your difficulties and challenges with emotional self-expression. We'll talk about it on our next show. And you can email those to us and visit us at eitrainingcompany.com. Email either one of us at Kim or David at eitrainingcompany.com. Let us know what your thoughts are and what your feelings are about our video broadcast, and about what we can tell you. So from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, I'm David Cory with the Emotional Intelligence Training Company signing off, and I'll turn it over to you, Kim, to wrap up.
And from Victoria on the left coast of the country, thanks for joining us again today. And I just want to reiterate, let us know what's happening out there for you in the world of emotional intelligence. Tell us about what's happening for you personally. Tell us about what's happening with you professionally using the EQI 2.0. Whatever you want to talk about, we relish hearing information from you folks out there. So thanks again for viewing us, and take care till the next time.